Hey everybody, what's going on? So in this section, we're gonna talk all about time. Now, the first thing you gotta know when it comes to time is that the more time that typically passes during a sales cycle, the more likely the deal is not going to close. And a saying that I remember someone told me was that time kills all deals. So you wanna make sure that things flow in your timeline and you don't leave it up to the prospect to decide when they're gonna buy, because if you let the other person decide, it's more unlikely that they're just not gonna take an action and purchase your product or service. Now, the second thing you need to know when it comes to time is that time is an illusion. And what I mean by this is, let's say somebody says they need 1 month, 3 months, or even 6 months before they make a decision on whether or not they should buy your product or service. Now, you really have to question that and ask, why is it that this person needs 6 months to make a decision, or 3 months, or 1 month? Why can't they make the decision within 1 week or by the end of the day, right? And so these are the things you always have to question, because when somebody tells you they need to think it over, you need to question, what do you need to think about? How long does that actually take? And once you really clarify all these questions, then people are working on your timeline versus you working on their timeline. And one of the most valuable skills a salesperson can have is really controlling time. Now, when I used to sell technology, we would do something where we would actually frame a person's perspective on time. So I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of this. So let's say I'm talking to a prospect and I basically tell him that this thing that he wants to buy from me will cost $10,000. Now, I also say that if he is able to make a decision by the end of the month, and I'll just make up a reason for why it has to be by the end of the month. For example, like that's when we close our books, or that's when the quarter ends, or whatever it is, then I will give him a discount of $3,000. So originally the price was $10,000, and then from there I changed the price to $7,000 if he can make the decision by the end of the month. Now, on his perspective, this is concept of loss aversion. He feels like, or he or she feels like, if they don't make the decision by the end of the month, they are going to lose out on $3,000. Now, on my end, do I necessarily need them to close by the end of the month? I don't. What I'm basically doing is controlling their perception of time. So instead of them thinking that they can wait a month or 2 months or even 3 months before making a decision, I say, hey, look, if you're actually interested in this product or service, I'm going to give you a discount because you're someone that likes to make decisions and because of blah, blah, blah. And if you can close by the end of the month, you get $3,000 off. And by giving them an incentive to actually make a decision by the end of the month, they are on your timeline and you're in control of the selling situation. But the truth is, whether I said you have to close by the end of the month, end of the day, end of the week, it doesn't really matter, right? Because I'm literally making up this timeline and in effect controlling this perspective on time. Depending on your deal size and how complex it is, if you're selling some kind of really basic consulting service or some kind of agency work or freelance work, sometimes you can actually close the deal on the first call by offering these type of incentives or special promotions. And the truth is, maybe the price for my product or service is actually only $7,000. And what I will do is I'll anchor it high at $10,000, offer an incentive at $7,000 if they make a decision more quickly. And then so I get them to buy my product or service at the price I want them to buy it at. And then they walk away feeling like they got a special discount. And so everybody wins. Not only is price something that's very flexible and you can increase and decrease anytime you want, but at the same time, timing and when you want someone to make a decision, that's also going to be very flexible as well. So price and time are things you can kind of change around when you want to negotiate a deal or when you're trying to get someone to make a decision much more quickly. Now, there are always going to be situations where somebody will say, hey, Patrick, I want your special discount. I want to sign it by the end of the month, but I need 2 months before I can make a decision. So this is actually great for you because it's, in a way, it's a little bit of an objection. So when someone says they can't do something, that's a light bulb should go off in your head and you should think, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. Why is it that they can't actually make a decision more quickly? So you ask a question like, that's interesting, John. Just curious, within those 2 months, what actually needs to happen for your internal process to actually make that decision? So if you figure out what those processes are, you can say, do you really think it takes 2 months to finish all these things? And then John or whoever you're talking to might say, well, it actually doesn't really take 2 months. I could probably do it in 1 week if I put in the work. And then you could say, well, why don't you just do it in a week versus 2 months? And then you really get the other person thinking, and you're changing their perspective on time. Because before, someone might think that they need 2 months to get all the approvals and all these things, but in reality, maybe they can do it in a week. So that's why you have to always question when someone gives you a timeline, whether or not it's real. Because on the reverse end, a lot of times when people give you a timeline and they want you to work on their timelines are made up too. So you might as well put it in your favor and take control back and create these timelines and incentives so that you are pushing people in the right direction to buy, rather than just waiting and seeing whether or not they'll buy in the future. So you always want that control, and you want to know what decisions need to be made. And when you have that control, selling becomes much more easier.